The water was a spring which God caused to well up from the sand at the touch of Ishmael's heel, and thereafter the valley soon became a halt for caravans by reason of the excellence and abundance of the water, and the well was named Zamzam. As to Genesis, it is the book of Isaac and his descendants, not of Abraham's other line. Of Ishmael it tells us, "And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer." After that, it scarcely mentions his name, except to inform us that the two brothers Isaac and Ishmael together buried their father in Hebron, and that some years later, Esau married his cousin, the daughter of Ishmael. But there is indirect praise of Ishmael and his mother in the psalm, which opens, "How amiable are thy tabernacles, Lord of hosts," and which tells of the miracle of Zamzam as having been caused by their passing through the valley. "Blessed is the man whose strength is in thee, in whose heart are the ways of them who, passing through the valley of Baca, make it a well." When Hagar and Ishmael reached their destination, Abraham had still 75 years to live, and he visited his son in the holy place to which Hagar had been guided. The Quran tells us that God showed him the exact site, near to the Well of Zamzam, upon which he and Ishmael must build a sanctuary, and they were told how it must be built. Its name, Kaaba, cube, is in virtue of its shape, which is approximately cubic. Its four corners are towards the 4 points of the compass. But the most holy object in that holy place is a celestial stone, which it is said was brought by an angel to Abraham from the nearby hill Abu Qubais, where it had been preserved ever since it had reached the earth. This black stone they built into the eastern corner of the Kaaba, and when the sanctuary was completed, God spoke again to Abraham and bade him institute the rite of the pilgrimage to Mecca or Mecca, as it later came to be called. "Purify my house for those who go the rounds of it, and who stand beside it, and bow and make prostration, and proclaim unto men the pilgrimage, that they may come unto thee on foot and on every lean camel out of every deep ravine." Now Hagar had told Abraham of her search for help, and he made it part of the rite of the pilgrimage that the pilgrims should pass 7 times between Safa and Marwa. For so the two eminences between which she had passed had come to be named. And later, Abraham prayed, perhaps in Canaan, looking round him at the rich pastures and fields of corn and wheat, "Verily I have settled a line of mine offspring in a tilthless valley at thy holy house. Therefore, incline unto them men's hearts and sustain them with fruits that they may be thankful." Abraham's prayer was answered, and rich gifts were continually brought to Mecca by the pilgrims who came to visit the holy house in increasing numbers from all parts of Arabia and beyond. The greater pilgrimage was made once a year, but the Kaaba could also be honored through a lesser pilgrimage at any time, and these rites continued to be performed with fervor and devotion according to the rules which Abraham and Ishmael had established. The descendants of Isaac also venerated the Kaaba as a temple that had been raised by Abraham. For them it counted as one of the outlying tabernacles of the Lord. But as the centuries passed, the purity of the worship of the one God came to be contaminated. The descendants of Ishmael became too numerous to live all in the valley of Mecca, and those who went to settle elsewhere took with them stones from the holy precinct and performed rites in honor of them. Later, through the influence of neighboring pagan tribes, idols came to be added to the stones, and finally, pilgrims began to bring idols to Mecca. These were set up in the vicinity of the Kaaba, and it was then that the Jews ceased to visit the temple of Abraham. The idolaters claimed that their idols were powers which acted as mediators between God and men. As a result, their approach to God became less and less direct, and the remoter he seemed, the dimmer became their sense of the reality of the world to come, until many of them ceased to believe in life after death. But in their midst, for those who could interpret it, there was a clear sign that they had fallen away from the truth. They no longer had access to the Well of Zamzam, and they had even forgotten where it lay. The Jurhumites who had come from the Yemen were directly responsible. They had established themselves in control of Mecca, and the descendants of Abraham had tolerated this because Ishmael's second wife was a kinswoman of Jurhum. But the time came when the Jurhumites began to commit all sorts of injustices for which they were finally driven out, and before they left, they buried the Well of Zamzam. No doubt they did this by way of revenge, but it was also likely that they hoped to return and enrich themselves from it, for they filled it up with part of the treasure of the sanctuary, offerings of pilgrims, which had accumulated in the Kaaba over the years. Then they covered it with sand.